The ancient bells of Valdoria's capital city rang out across the misty morning as Captain Marcus Sterling adjusted his ceremonial armor one final time. As the youngest member of the Royal Guard's inner circle, he had sworn an oath to protect the crown with his life. But today, that oath would be tested in ways he never imagined. Queen Isabel Blackthorne had always been a figure of controversy since marrying into the royal family 15 years ago. Her sharp tongue and ambitious nature had earned her many enemies among the nobility, but none dared speak against her openly. She was, after all, the wife of the beloved King Edmund, and mother to Prince Alexander. The heir apparent. Marcus had noticed the changes in the palace dynamics over the past few months. Whispered conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Important documents disappeared from the royal archives. Most disturbing of all, he had witnessed several heated arguments between Queen Isabel and Prince Alexander, arguments that seemed to center around the aging King Edmund's declining health. The turning point came on a cold Tuesday morning when Marcus was assigned to escort Queen Isabel to her private chambers after a particularly tense council meeting. The meeting had been about the succession plans, and Prince Alexander had publicly questioned some of his stepmother's recent policy suggestions. The tension in the room had been thick enough to cut with a sword. As they walked through the ornate corridors lined with portraits of previous monarchs, Queen Isabel's demeanor shifted from her usual composed facade to something much darker. Her green eyes, usually calculated and cold, now burned with barely contained rage. Marcus had served the royal family long enough to recognize the signs of someone planning something dangerous. "Your Majesty, is everything all right?" Marcus ventured. Carefully, his hand instinctively moving closer to his sword hilt. Queen Isabel stopped abruptly and turned to face him. For a moment, her mask slipped completely, revealing a woman consumed by ambition and fury. "That boy thinks he can challenge me," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "He forgets that I have more influence in this kingdom than he realizes." The words sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Prince Alexander had recently turned 25. And had been taking on more responsibilities as his father's health deteriorated. The kingdom loved him, seeing him as a worthy successor to the throne. But clearly, Queen Isabel had different plans that evening. As Marcus completed his rounds of the palace, he overheard a conversation that would change everything. Hidden in the shadows of the royal library, he listened as Queen Isabel met with Lord Garrett Voss, an ambitious nobleman known for his questionable loyalty and hunger for power. "The prince becomes more popular with each passing day," Queen Isabel was saying, her voice filled with frustration. "If something were to happen to Edmund before we act, Alexander would ascend the throne immediately. We cannot allow that to happen." Lord Voss leaned forward in his chair, his eyes gleaming in the candlelight. "What are you suggesting, Your Majesty?" "I'm suggesting that accidents can be arranged," she replied coldly. "Prince Alexander has always been reckless. Perhaps a hunting accident or a fall from his horse during training. These things happen all the time." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. The queen was planning to murder the heir to the throne, her own stepson. His mind raced as he tried to process what he had just heard. As a member of the royal guard, his duty was to protect all members of the royal family, including Prince Alexander. But how could he act against the queen without proof? The conversation continued, with Queen Isabel and Lord Voss discussing potential methods and timing. They spoke of making it look accidental, of ensuring that suspicion would never fall on them. Marcus realized that this was not a sudden decision born of anger, but a carefully planned conspiracy that had been in the works for months. As the meeting concluded, and the conspirators parted ways, Marcus retreated to his quarters, his mind spinning with the enormity of what he had discovered. He had always prided himself on his loyalty to the crown, but now he faced an impossible choice. His oath bound him to serve the royal family, but how could he remain silent while one member plotted against another? Sleep did not come easily that night as Marcus wrestled with his conscience. By dawn he had made his decision. He could not stand by and watch an innocent man be murdered, even if it meant going against the queen herself. Prince Alexander had to be warned, but Marcus knew he needed more than just his word against the queen's. He needed proof, evidence that would be impossible to deny. The next few days would test every skill Marcus had learned in his years of service. He would have to become a spy in his own palace, gathering evidence against one of the most powerful people in the kingdom while maintaining his cover as a loyal guard. One wrong move, and he would find himself facing charges of treason, or worse, becoming the next victim of Queen Isabel's deadly ambitions. Marcus spent the following week walking a dangerous tightrope between his duties as a guard and his secret mission to gather evidence. Every interaction with Queen Isabel felt like a test, her piercing green eyes seeming to search his face for any sign of betrayal. He maintained his professional demeanor, but inside, his heart raced with each passing hour. The opportunity Marcus had been waiting for came during the annual harvest festival preparations. The entire palace was buzzing with activity as servants decorated halls and prepared for the grand celebration. In the chaos, people moved more freely, and conversations happened in corners where they might normally be overheard. Queen Isabel had requested additional security for a private meeting with several foreign dignitaries. A perfect cover for Marcus to position himself strategically. He volunteered for the assignment, knowing it would give him access to areas of the palace he normally wouldn't patrol. As he stood guard outside the Queen's private study, Marcus noticed Lord Voss approaching with a leather satchel clutched tightly in his hand. The nobleman's usual confident swagger seemed replaced by nervous energy, and he kept glancing over his shoulder as if afraid of being followed. "The arrangements have been made," Lord Voss whispered urgently as he entered the study. Marcus pressed closer to the door, straining to hear every word. "The blacksmith has prepared the special equipment, and our man in the stables has been briefed on the modifications to the prince's saddle." Marcus felt his stomach drop. They were planning to sabotage Prince Alexander's horse during the upcoming royal hunt, a tradition that would take place just 3 days after the harvest festival. The prince was known for his love of riding and often chose the most spirited horses for these events. "Excellent," came Queen Isabel's voice, cold and satisfied. "And the timing?" "The hunt is scheduled to pass through Ravenswood Valley," Lord Voss replied. "The terrain there is treacherous enough that a fall would appear completely natural. Even if he survives the initial accident, the remote location ensures that help would arrive too late." The cruelty of the plan hit Marcus like a physical blow. They weren't just planning to kill Prince Alexander. They were ensuring he would suffer before he died. His hands clenched into fists as he fought to maintain his composure while every instinct screamed at him to burst through the door and arrest them both, but he knew that acting impulsively would only result in his own death and the continuation of their plot. He needed tangible proof, something that would convince King Edmund and the royal council of the conspiracy against his son. The conversation inside continued, revealing more disturbing details. Queen Isabel spoke of letters she had already prepared, documents that would be discovered after the prince's death, suggesting he had been involved in treasonous activities. She had crafted an entire false narrative that would not only eliminate Alexander but also destroy his reputation posthumously. "The people must believe that his death was divine justice," she explained with chilling calculation. "A traitor's fitting end, leaving the kingdom grateful for my guidance during this difficult transition." Marcus realized that Queen Isabel's ambitions extended far beyond simply removing Prince Alexander. She was positioning herself to rule as regent, potentially for decades, especially if anything happened to the aging King Edmund. The scope of her treachery was breathtaking. As the meeting concluded, Marcus quickly retreated to a nearby alcove, pretending to adjust his armor as Lord Voss emerged from the study. The nobleman's face was pale but determined, and he carried himself with the bearing of a man who believed he was about to become very powerful indeed. That evening, Marcus made his way to the royal stables under the pretense of checking security for the upcoming hunt. The head groom, Thomas Hartwell, had served the royal family for over 30 years and was known for his unwavering loyalty to Prince Alexander. If anyone could be trusted with such sensitive information, it would be him. Marcus found Thomas examining the prince's favorite stallion, a magnificent black horse named Thunder that had been Alexander's companion for nearly a decade. The old groom looked up as Marcus approached, noting the serious expression on the young guard's face. "Something troubles you, Captain Sterling," Thomas observed, his weathered hands never stopping their gentle care of the horse. "Thomas, I need to ask you something. And I need you to promise me that this conversation never happened," Marcus began carefully. The groom's eyes sharpened, recognizing the gravity in Marcus's tone. "Has anyone approached you about making any modifications to the prince's equipment for the hunt? Any special requests or unusual orders?" Thomas frowned, his brow furrowing as he considered the question. "Now that you mention it, Lord Voss did stop by yesterday. Said he had concerns about the prince's safety and wanted to inspect the saddle personally. Seemed odd at the time, but he claimed it was on the Queen's orders." Marcus felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Did he touch anything? Make any changes? He examined the saddle thoroughly, particularly the girth straps. Said he wanted to ensure they were properly maintained. Thomas paused, his expression growing troubled. "Captain, is there something I should know about?" The weight of the secret felt crushing, but Marcus knew he couldn't involve Thomas directly without putting the old groom in danger. Instead, he chose his words carefully. "I want you to personally inspect every piece of equipment that will be used for the hunt. Check everything twice, and if you find anything unusual, anything at all that seems out of place, I want you to come to me immediately." Thomas nodded solemnly, understanding that something serious was at stake without needing to know the full details. "I'll examine everything tonight, Captain. You have my word." As Marcus left the stables, his mind was already working on the next phase of his plan. He had confirmed that the sabotage was real, but he still needed concrete evidence that would hold up against Queen Isabel's word. The hunt was only days away, and time was running out to save Prince Alexander's life while exposing the conspiracy that threatened the very foundation of the kingdom. The next morning brought unexpected news that would change Marcus's carefully laid plans. King Edmund had suffered a severe collapse during the night and was now confined to his bedchamber, attended by the royal physicians around the clock. The entire palace was thrown into turmoil, with courtiers whispering about the king's condition and what it might mean for the succession. Marcus realized immediately that this development would only accelerate Queen Isabel's timeline. With the king incapacitated, Prince Alexander would naturally assume more responsibilities, making him an even more urgent threat to her ambitions. The young guard knew he had to act quickly before the queen moved up her deadly plan. Thomas Hartwell sought out Marcus just after dawn, his face grim with disturbing discoveries. The old groom led Marcus to a private corner of the stables, away from prying eyes and ears. "Captain, I found what you were worried about," Thomas whispered, producing a small leather pouch from his coat. "The girth strap on Prince Alexander's saddle has been tampered with. Look here." Thomas showed Marcus the sabotaged leather, pointing out where it had been carefully weakened with precise cuts that would be invisible during a casual inspection. The damage was expertly done, designed to fail under stress but appear as normal wear to anyone not looking specifically for sabotage. "This would hold for the first part of the ride," Thomas explained, his voice heavy with anger and concern. "But once the prince urged Thunder into a full gallop, especially over rough terrain, the strap would snap. At that speed, he'd be thrown with tremendous force." Marcus examined the evidence carefully, his mind racing. This was exactly the proof he needed, but now he faced a new problem. With King Edmund bedridden, who could he trust with this information? The royal council was filled with nobles whose loyalties were uncertain, and many had their own political ambitions that might cloud their judgment. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Sir Robert Ashford, the captain of the Royal Guard and Marcus's direct superior. The older knight's weathered face bore the strain of the current crisis, and his usually immaculate uniform showed signs of a sleepless night. "Sterling, I need you to take over security arrangements for Prince Alexander," Sir Robert commanded. "With His Majesty's condition uncertain, the prince's safety is our highest priority. I'm assigning you as his personal bodyguard until further notice." This assignment was both a blessing and a curse for Marcus. It would give him direct access to warn the prince, but it would also put him under constant scrutiny from Queen Isabel and her allies. Every move he made would be watched, every conversation analyzed for signs of disloyalty. As Marcus made his way to Prince Alexander's chambers, he encountered Queen Isabel in the corridor outside the king's room. She emerged from visiting her husband, her face a masterpiece of manufactured concern and grief. But Marcus could see the cold calculation behind her performance, the way she assessed every person she passed as either useful or threatening to her plans. "Captain Sterling," she said, her voice smooth as silk but with an underlying edge. "I understand you've been assigned to protect my stepson during this difficult time. I trust you understand the importance of ensuring his safety." The words were innocent enough, but the way she emphasized safety sent a chill down Marcus's spine. She was warning him, letting him know that she was aware of his new assignment and that any interference with her plans would not be tolerated. "Of course, Your Majesty," Marcus replied with a respectful bow. "Prince Alexander's protection is my highest priority." Queen Isabel studied his face for a long moment, her green eyes searching for any hint of deception. Finally, she nodded and continued down the corridor. But Marcus could feel her watching him until he disappeared around the corner. Prince Alexander was in his private study when Marcus arrived, surrounded by documents and correspondence that had piled up due to his father's illness. At 25, the prince had already proven himself to be intelligent, compassionate, and capable of leadership. His subjects loved him, and even his political opponents respected his integrity. "Captain Sterling," Prince Alexander looked up from his papers, his face showing the strain of recent events. "I suppose you're here about the security changes." "Honestly, I think Sir Robert is being overly cautious, but I understand the need for additional precautions given Father's condition." Marcus hesitated, knowing that what he was about to say would sound like madness to anyone not privy to the conspiracy. But the prince's life hung in the balance, and there was no time for subtle approaches. "Your Highness, I need to speak with you about a matter of utmost urgency," Marcus began, his voice low and serious. "What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to believe, but I have evidence to support every word." Prince Alexander set down his quill and gave Marcus his full attention, recognizing the gravity in the guard's manner. "Go on, Captain." Marcus took a deep breath and began to explain everything he had discovered, from the overheard conversation between Queen Isabel and Lord Voss to the sabotage saddle in the stables. He watched as the prince's expression shifted from skepticism to horror to grim determination. "You're saying that Isabel is planning to murder me during tomorrow's hunt?" Prince Alexander asked quietly, his voice steady despite the shocking revelation. "Yes, Your Highness. And not only that, but she's prepared false evidence to destroy your reputation after your death, positioning herself to rule as regent indefinitely." The prince was silent for a long moment, processing the enormity of the betrayal. Finally he spoke, his voice filled with sad understanding. "I've sensed something wrong in recent months. The way she looked at me during council meetings, the subtle undermining of my suggestions. I thought it was simple political maneuvering, but this—" "What do you want to do, Your Highness?" Marcus asked. "We could confront her directly, but without more concrete evidence, it would be your word against hers." "And given your father's condition?" Prince Alexander nodded grimly. "She would claim I was making wild accusations to seize power while father is incapacitated. The council might even see it as evidence of the very instability she's planning to fabricate." He paused, thinking carefully. "No, we need to catch her in the act, with witnesses that cannot be dismissed or bought." Marcus felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The prince was willing to put himself in danger to expose the conspiracy, but the risks were enormous. One mistake, one moment of carelessness, and both of their lives would be forfeit. Prince Alexander and Marcus spent the rest of the day crafting a dangerous plan that would expose Queen Isabel's conspiracy while protecting the prince's life. They decided to proceed with the hunt as scheduled, but with secret modifications that would turn the trap back on its creators. Thomas Hartwell proved invaluable to their scheme. The trusted groom not only replaced the sabotage saddle with an identical but safe one, but also suggested a way to document the evidence of tampering. Using his knowledge of metalwork, Thomas carefully removed the damaged girth strap and preserved it as proof. While creating an exact replica that showed the sabotage clearly, meanwhile, Marcus reached out to Sir Robert Ashford with a carefully crafted story. He couldn't reveal the full conspiracy without risking Sir Robert's disbelief or potential loyalty conflicts, so instead he expressed concerns about general security threats during the hunt. Sir Robert agreed to position additional guards along the hunting route, unknowingly providing the witnesses Marcus and Alexander would need. The night before the hunt, Marcus conducted a final security sweep of the palace. As he passed by Queen Isabel's private chambers, he heard voices within and recognized the urgent tones of a final planning session. Using skills learned during his guard training, he positioned himself near a window that had been left slightly open for ventilation. Inside, Queen Isabel was meeting with Lord Voss and two other conspirators Marcus hadn't seen before. One was Sir Damien Cross, a knight known for his gambling debts and questionable morals. The other was Lady Margaret Whitmore, a court noble whose family had lost influence in recent years and harbored resentment against the current royal line. "Everything is in place," Lord Voss was saying, his voice tight with nervous energy. "Cross will be positioned at the overlook in Ravenswood Valley, ready to signal when the accident occurs. Lady Whitmore will be back at the palace, prepared to comfort the grieving king and guide his response to the tragic news." Queen Isabel nodded approvingly. "And the letters implicating Alexander in treasonous correspondence?" "Hidden in his private chambers," Lady Whitmore replied. "Once he's dead, a concerned servant will discover them and bring them to the council. The evidence will be overwhelming." Marcus felt sick listening to the cold efficiency with which they planned to destroy Prince Alexander's life and legacy. But he also felt a grim satisfaction knowing that their own words were condemning them. He had positioned a small mirror to reflect sound more clearly, and every word was being etched into his memory with perfect clarity. The conversation continued, revealing even more disturbing details. They had bribed several servants to provide false testimony about the prince's supposed treasonous activities. They had forged documents that would implicate him in communications with enemy kingdoms. The conspiracy was far more extensive than Marcus had initially realized. "What about the guards, Sterling?" Sir Damien asked suddenly, causing Marcus's blood to freeze. "He's been assigned as Alexander's personal protection. Could he be a problem?" Queen Isabel was quiet for a moment before responding. "Sterling is young and idealistic, but he's also ambitious. If Alexander dies as planned, I'll promote him to captain of the guard. His loyalty will follow his advancement as it always does with men like him." The casual dismissal of his integrity stung, but Marcus forced himself to remain focused on gathering intelligence. The meeting continued for another hour, covering contingency plans and backup scenarios. By the time the conspirators finally dispersed, Marcus had a complete picture of their operation. The next morning dawned gray and misty. Perfect weather for hunting, but also ideal for concealing treacherous activities. The royal hunting party assembled in the courtyard just after sunrise, with Prince Alexander appearing calm and confident despite the danger he knew awaited him. Queen Isabel was present to see the hunting party off, playing the role of concerned stepmother to perfection. She kissed Alexander's cheek and wished him good fortune, her performance so convincing that several courtiers commented on her obvious affection for the prince. Marcus rode directly beside Prince Alexander as they left the palace gates, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Sir Robert had positioned guards throughout the route as requested. Though he remained unaware of the specific danger they were meant to witness, the hunting party consisted of 12 riders, including several young nobles and court officials who regularly joined the prince on such expeditions. Marcus had carefully observed each participant, noting that Lord Voss had strategically positioned himself near the middle of the group, where he could observe everything while maintaining an appearance of casual participation. As they rode through the countryside toward Ravenswood Valley, Marcus noticed Sir Damien Cross riding ahead of the group, supposedly scouting for game signs. In reality, Marcus knew he was positioning himself at the overlook point where he could watch the assassination attempt unfold. The Morning passed tensely but uneventfully as the hunting party tracked deer through the rolling hills. Prince Alexander maintained his usual enthusiasm for the sport, but Marcus could see the subtle signs of strain around his eyes. The prince was acutely aware that at any moment, the conspiracy against his life would reach its climax. As they approached Ravenswood Valley, Marcus gave Prince Alexander a slight nod, the signal they had agreed upon. The prince acknowledged with an almost imperceptible tightening of his grip on his reins. The moment of truth was approaching, and everything depended on their ability to turn the conspirators' trap against them. The valley stretched before them, its steep sides and rocky terrain creating the perfect location for what should have been a fatal accident. Marcus could see Sir Damien Cross positioned on the high ground above, supposedly watching for game but actually waiting to witness murder. Prince Alexander spurred his horse forward, calling out that he had spotted a magnificent stag deeper in the valley. The other riders followed eagerly, unaware that they were riding into the culmination of a deadly plot that would either expose a terrible conspiracy or result in the death of the kingdom's future king. The crucial moment arrived as Prince Alexander rode his stallion Thunder toward the steepest part of Ravenswood Valley. According to the conspirators' plan, this should have been where the sabotaged girth strap would fail, sending the prince tumbling to his death on the rocky terrain below. Marcus rode close behind, his heart pounding as he watched for any sign of trouble. The prince urged Thunder into a gallop, exactly as the conspirators expected, but the secure saddle held firm. From his position on the overlook, Sir Damien Cross must have been confused by the prince's continued safe riding. Prince Alexander suddenly pulled his horse to a dramatic stop and called out loudly, "My saddle feels loose. Something's wrong." He dismounted quickly and began examining his equipment with exaggerated concern, drawing the attention of the entire hunting party. This was the moment they had planned for. Marcus immediately rushed to assist, making a show of inspecting the saddle while several other riders gathered around. In a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, including Sir Damien Cross watching from above, Marcus announced his shocking discovery. "Your Highness, this girth strap has been deliberately cut." Marcus held up the evidence for all to see, including the replacement strap that Thomas had prepared to demonstrate the sabotage clearly. "Someone has tried to sabotage your equipment." The reaction from the hunting party was immediate and dramatic. Several nobles gasped in horror, while others began looking around suspiciously at their companions. Lord Voss, who had been riding near the back of the group, attempted to appear as shocked as everyone else. But Marcus caught the brief moment of panic that flashed across his face. Sir Robert Ashford, who had been positioned with the advanced security team, rode up quickly upon hearing the commotion. His experienced eye immediately recognized the significance of what Marcus was showing him. "This is clearly deliberate sabotage," he confirmed, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "An attempt on Prince Alexander's life." Prince Alexander, still playing his part perfectly, turned to address the entire group. "It seems someone in our kingdom wishes me ill," he said with controlled anger. "But I will not be intimidated by cowardly attacks. Marcus, I want a full investigation into who had access to my equipment." The words sent a visible shudder through Lord Voss, who was now trapped among witnesses to his failed assassination plot. He couldn't flee without immediately appearing guilty, but staying meant facing the investigation that would inevitably lead back to him and Queen Isabel. Marcus stepped forward with the next phase of their plan. "Your Highness, I believe this may be connected to some suspicious activities I've observed at the palace. With your permission, I think we should return immediately and secure any evidence before it can be destroyed." The hunting party rode back to the palace in tense silence, with Sir Robert's guards keeping careful watch on everyone present. Marcus made sure to position guards near Lord Voss without making it obvious, ensuring the conspirator couldn't escape or send warning messages ahead of their arrival back at the palace. Marcus led Prince Alexander and Sir Robert directly to Queen Isabel's chambers. They found her in her private study, calmly reviewing correspondence as if nothing unusual had happened. Her composure was perfect, but Marcus noticed how her eyes immediately fixed on Prince Alexander, clearly surprised and disturbed to see him alive and unharmed. Alexander. Darling, she said with manufactured concern, you're back early. I hope nothing went wrong with the hunt. Prince Alexander looked at her with cold certainty. Something did go wrong, stepmother. Someone tried to kill me by sabotaging my saddle. Marcus discovered evidence of deliberate tampering. Queen Isabel's reaction was masterful in its calculation. She gasped and pressed her hand to her heart, the picture of shocked distress. How terrible. Who would do such a thing? Thank goodness you weren't hurt. But Marcus was watching her carefully, and he caught the subtle signs that betrayed her true feelings. The slight tightening around her eyes, the almost imperceptible pause before her response. The way her fingers gripped her chair just a moment too tightly, Sir Robert stepped forward with professional authority. Your Majesty will need to question everyone who had access to the prince's equipment. This investigation will be thorough and complete. Of course, Queen Isabel replied smoothly. I want the person responsible found and punished to the fullest extent of the law. Prince Alexander exchanged a meaningful look with Marcus. It was time for the most dangerous part of their plan. Actually, stepmother, I think you might be able to help us more directly than you realize. The Queen's eyebrows rose in apparent curiosity, but Marcus saw the wariness that flickered in her gaze. How so, Alexander? Well, the prince continued conversationally, whoever planned this assassination would have needed inside knowledge of my hunting schedule, my equipment preferences, and access to the stables. They would also have needed Confederates to help them execute the plan. Queen Isabel's smile remained fixed, but it was becoming increasingly strained. I'm sure the investigation will reveal the truth. Marcus stepped forward with the evidence they had prepared. Your Majesty, during my security rounds, I've documented some concerning activities. Would you mind if we searched for any correspondence or documents that might shed light on this conspiracy? The request was phrased politely, but both the Queen and everyone else in the room understood it for what it was, an accusation. Queen Isabel's mask finally began to slip as she realized the trap that was closing around her. I hardly think that's necessary, she said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. Surely you don't suspect me of plotting against my own stepson. Prince Alexander's reply was quiet but devastating. At this point, stepmother, I suspect everyone who had the means and opportunity. Unless, of course, you have something to hide? The confrontation reached its climax as Queen Isabel realized that her carefully constructed facade was crumbling. Sir Robert had begun a systematic search of her chambers, and it was only a matter of time before they discovered the forged documents and correspondence that would expose the full extent of her conspiracy. Marcus watched as the Queen's composure finally shattered. Her green eyes blazed with fury and desperation as she understood that her plot had not only failed but had turned into her own downfall. The woman who had spent years manipulating court politics was now trapped by her own schemes. You have no right to search my private chambers, Queen Isabel declared, her voice rising with panic. I am the Queen of Valdoria, and I demand that this outrageous investigation stop immediately. Prince Alexander remained calm in the face of her outburst. You are indeed the Queen's stepmother, but you are not above the law, especially when that law concerns treason and attempted murder. The word treason hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in the room understood its implications. If proven guilty of treason, Queen Isabel would face execution. Regardless of her royal status, Sir Robert emerged from the Queen's private desk with a collection of documents that made his weathered face go pale. Your Highness, he said to Prince Alexander, you need to see these immediately. The papers Sir Robert had found were even more damning than Marcus and Alexander had hoped. There were detailed plans for the assassination, including backup methods if the sabotage saddle failed. There were forged letters designed to implicate Prince Alexander in treasonous activities. Most shocking of all, there was correspondence with foreign agents, offering to sell military secrets in exchange for gold that would fund her rise to power. Queen Isabel's betrayal went far beyond simple ambition. She had been willing to sell out the entire kingdom to achieve her goals. As Sir Robert read portions of the documents aloud, Queen Isabel's defiance transformed into desperate fury. Those documents are forgeries, she screamed. This is all an elaborate plot by Alexander to remove me from power. He's the one planning treason, not me. But her accusations fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence. The handwriting was clearly hers, verified by samples Sir Robert had collected from official royal correspondence. The documents contained information that only she could have known, including private details about castle defenses and troop movements. Marcus stepped forward with the final piece of evidence that would seal Queen Isabel's fate. Your Majesty, I have witnesses who overheard you planning Prince Alexander's murder. Lord Voss, Sir Damien Cross, and Lady Margaret Whitmore were all present at meetings where you discussed the assassination in detail. At the mention of her co-conspirators, Queen Isabel's face went completely white. She realized that not only had her plot failed, but her entire network of allies was about to be exposed and arrested. The sound of marching feet in the corridor announced the arrival of additional guards, led by Lord Chancellor William Blackwood, who had been summoned by Sir Robert. The elderly statesman's face was grave as he surveyed the scene before him. Your Majesty, Lord Blackwood addressed Queen Isabel formally, by the authority vested in me by His Majesty King Edmund and the Royal Council, you are hereby arrested on charges of high treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and collaboration with foreign enemies of the crown. Queen Isabel made one final attempt to salvage the situation. You cannot arrest me. I am the Queen. Edmund will never allow this. Prince Alexander's response was firm and final. My father's primary concern has always been the welfare of the kingdom. When he learns of your betrayal, he will support whatever justice demands. As the guards moved to restrain her, Queen Isabel's composure completely collapsed. The woman who had spent years coldly planning murder and treason was reduced to desperate pleas and wild accusations. This is all lies. I have served this kingdom faithfully. Alexander is jealous of my influence with his father. But her words carried no weight against the mountain of evidence that had been gathered. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and sadness as he watched the woman who had nearly destroyed the kingdom being led away in chains. Relief that Prince Alexander was safe and the conspiracy exposed, but sadness that it had come to this tragic end over the following days. The full scope of Queen Isabel's treachery was revealed as her co-conspirators were arrested and interrogated. Lord Voss confessed almost immediately, hoping for leniency in exchange for his cooperation. Sir Damien Cross and Lady Margaret Whitmore initially tried to maintain their innocence but eventually broke down when confronted with evidence of their involvement. The trials that followed shocked the entire kingdom. The evidence presented was overwhelming and undeniable. Queen Isabel had not only planned to murder Prince Alexander, but had been systematically working to undermine the kingdom's security and stability for years. King Edmund, despite his illness, insisted on being present when the sentences were announced. His face showed the profound grief of a man who had been betrayed by the woman he had loved and trusted. Queen Isabel was sentenced to life imprisonment in the Tower of Valdoria, while her co-conspirators faced various punishments ranging from exile to execution. In the aftermath of the conspiracy, Marcus was indeed promoted to captain of the Royal Guard, though not for the reasons Queen Isabel had cynically predicted. His loyalty, courage, and dedication to truth had saved not only Prince Alexander's life but the stability of the entire kingdom. Prince Alexander, now recognized as the undisputed heir to the throne, implemented sweeping reforms to prevent such conspiracies in the future. The kingdom emerged stronger from the crisis, with renewed respect for the rule of law and the courage of those who stand up for justice. As Marcus stood guard outside the royal chambers one evening, watching Prince Alexander work late into the night on legislation that would benefit his future subjects, he reflected on the events that had brought them to this point. The conspiracy that had threatened to destroy the kingdom had ultimately revealed its strength and the character of those who truly served it with honor.